The year is 1963. A sea of humanity gathers at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Anticipation, thick in the humid Washington air. A man, dressed in a sharp suit, steps forward. His voice, steady and resolute, echoes across the crowd. "I have a dream." These words would not only define a movement, but also cement Martin Luther King Jr. as one of the most influential figures in American history. But how did a young preacher from Atlanta rise to lead the fight for civil rights? What trials and tribulations shaped him into the leader we revere today? This is the story of Martin Luther King Jr., a journey of faith, courage, and an unyielding dream. Early life and formative years. Born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Luther King Jr. was raised in a deeply religious household. His father, Martin Luther King Sr., was a fiery Baptist preacher, and his mother, Alberta Williams King, was a devoted church musician. Growing up in the segregated South, young Martin quickly became aware of the harsh realities of racism. One defining moment came when he was just 6 years old. A white friend's parents forbade them from playing together because of his skin color. This early experience planted the seeds of resistance within him. Despite the racial barriers, King excelled in school, skipping 2 grades and entering Morehouse College at just 15 years old. There, he was mentored by Dr. Benjamin Mays, a theologian and activist who introduced him to the philosophies of nonviolence and social justice. Inspired, King pursued further studies at Crozer Theological Seminary and later earned a PhD in systematic theology from Boston University. It was in Boston that he met Coretta Scott, a talented musician and activist who would become his wife and lifelong partner in the struggle for justice. Rise to prominence. King's leadership in the civil rights movement began in 1955 with the Montgomery bus boycott. When Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger, local activists turned to King, a young and eloquent minister, to lead the charge. The boycott lasted over a year, facing violent opposition, bombings, and threats. But it ultimately led to the Supreme Court ruling that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. This victory thrust King into the national spotlight. As the leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, King championed nonviolent resistance, drawing inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi. His marches, speeches, and sit-ins shook the foundations of segregation. The Birmingham Campaign of 1963, where King was arrested and wrote his famous Letter from Birmingham Jail, was a turning point. In it, he passionately defended civil disobedience. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Challenges, betrayals, and opposition. With fame came enemies. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, saw King as a threat, wiretapping his phones and attempting to discredit him. Some civil rights activists, frustrated by his commitment to nonviolence, considered him too passive. Even within his own movement, divisions grew, especially as younger activists like Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party pushed for more radical approaches. The 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act were monumental achievements, but King did not stop there. He turned his focus to economic justice and opposition to the Vietnam War, a stance that cost him many allies. Some accused him of overstepping his role, but he remained steadfast, declaring, "A true leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus." The final days. By 1968, King had shifted his efforts toward the Poor People's Campaign, advocating for economic equality. On April 3rd, in Memphis, Tennessee, he delivered his hauntingly prophetic "I've been to the mountaintop" speech. "I may not get there with you," he said, "but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." The next evening, as he stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, an assassin's bullet struck him down. The world mourned, but his dream did not die. Legacy and impact. Martin Luther King Jr. left behind a legacy that transcends generations. His words and actions paved the way for racial equality, inspiring countless movements around the globe. Today, streets, schools, and a national holiday bear his name, ensuring that his message of justice and love endures. But his legacy is not just in the past, it lives on in the fight against modern injustices. As we reflect on his life, one question remains: are we truly living up to the dream he envisioned? This is not just history. This is a call to action.